I've seen the highs and the lows.
Before 2009, Raj Rajaratnam was mostly unknown outside Wall Street. Running the Galleon Group with $7 billion in assets under management and rubbing shoulders with the world's financial elite. Then, everything changed. He was indicted for insider trading, launching one of the most high-profile financial crime trials in recent history. His story resonated far beyond the markets. A son of middle-class parents who climbed to billionaire status, at one time on Forbes' richest Americans list, all through grit and hard work. His fall was just as dramatic.
At the highs, I had my own plane. I used to fly around to the Caribbean with the family, go to sporting events and all that. In the lows, I was in a room that was probably 5 feet by 12 feet.
We sat down to talk about the rise, the fall, the lessons, and the man behind the headlines. I'm Miriam Nizam for Camel Culture. Here's my conversation with Raj Rajaratnam. Raj, thanks so much for making the time to speak with me today.
You're most welcome.
It's been lovely to be back in New York, and thank you for having us in your offices. Clearly, you picked stunning scenery for us to do this today. You know, before we get started, maybe we can I can get to know you a little bit. What do you do for fun in New York? And I know you told me you love walking by the river with a nice coffee in the morning, but what else?
I like spending an evening with my friends, just BSing and laughing and drinking. For me, I have a whole bunch of close friends, and spending time with them is really, really satisfying. And I told you earlier, I'm in my JOMO phase.
Yes.
Which is joy of missing out. And so I don't need to go to a club or a fancy dinner. Having people over, drinking and chatting would be my favorite things to do.
Well, you know what? I read in your book, when you were younger, your evenings basically were spent out in the veranda with your family, and you guys would all get together, have a drink, or play badminton. So it sounds like you had like an amazing childhood. And I guess I wanted to know, in terms of your childhood, number one, it sounded lovely, but what about your Tamil upbringing do you think kind of resonates with you today, that you've carried through? Because clearly your childhood has supported you growing into this driven individual, but what about your Tamil side of things?
Well, at that time, I didn't think of Tamil versus Sinhalese. We were all little kids. We had Sinhalese and Tamil children around the lane that we lived in. But once I started going to kindergarten and high school, I realized that there were Sinhalese and there were Tamils, because we were put in different sections. And I don't know how it happened, but during the break, we started fighting each other. That means the Tamil students and the Sinhalese students would take a ruler, as they called it, and would try to beat each other up.
Okay.
And unfortunately or fortunately, I was on the largest side. So I was generally picked by the Tamil class to fight the bigger guy in the Sinhalese class.
Okay.
And so that started the Tamil Sinhala side, type of thinking.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But till today, some of my best friends are Sinhalese and Muslims and Tamils. And unfortunately, during that primary school area, it just evolved into that.
Yeah, fair enough. Favorite Tamil food? I know string hoppers are on the list, but anything else?
I like string hoppers.
Okay.
I like fish curry and pol sambo.
Fair enough. Do you cook? Can you cook?
I can heat up food.
Okay. Well, listen, that's a good skill. You'll survive. Your childhood, like I said, was lovely, but it was also, you were lucky enough to have reasonable amounts of comfort, right? Your father was the CEO of the Singer company. Your mother was very well educated. You had the support of grandparents who I think you were just incredibly connected to, as well as your uncle. So you grew up in a very secure environment, and yet you've turned into this incredibly driven, competitive individual. You could have just leaned into the comforts and not pushed yourself to be better, to take risks. So where do you think that drive came from?
I think when I went to boarding school at the age of 11
Okay.
in a different country, India, and I think to survive, you have to be competitive, because in the evenings you don't go to your mother or father, you have to stay there. And boys between 11 and 18 can be cruel and, just annoying. And
I don't know if they ever grow out of it, but yes.
but so to survive, you had to make sure that you were not the one who was picked on. So I went to boarding school in England as well.
Right.
And in boys' boarding schools, you had guys who were picked on and the guys who did the bullying.
Right.
So two groups, right? And so I naturally evolved into the one that was not picked on. Because from a young age, my father said, don't throw the first punch, but make sure you throw the last punch.
Right.
And I don't know, something in me, I never took a step back. I didn't run. I actually relished a good battle and relished.
Are there
and
any
relished,
fights we need to know about?
No.
No. Okay.
But I relished a good fight and I relished a good clashing. I got all of them.
Okay. So you're driven to make an impact, to leave a lasting impact, by all means.
I think I'm driven to, I really get insanely angry when I see a bully
Okay.
pick on a smaller guy. If that's making sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I don't walk away. I always stop and ask the bully, "What's up, man?"
Okay. All right.
And that's right through college, because when I was in England, the National Front, the Nazi group, was running around Paki bashing, right? And they used to say, all Pakis should go back. And many people in the evenings or nights would be physically scared because these guys would come in packs and they would target an Indian or a South Asian that was by himself. And so that also was unfair in my, if you want to fight, let's do it one-on-one.
Right.
So I used to carry chili powder in my pocket. And if they came too close and started making noise,
Right.
I was the first one to throw the chili powder. See, when you fight, you have to not wait for the guy to hit. You have to preempt him. So when it gets to the tipping point, you go so that you don't get hurt,
Skills that I think all of us could use a little bit of. So I'm good with that piece of advice. So you are clearly focused and intent on supporting, I guess, the underdog if needed. And so what do you do? Just, maybe we're going to move forward a little bit, but it sounds like you're going to fight for those who don't have a voice. So what do you do today in terms of the work that you do? You run a family office here in New York, but I think you have a couple of other endeavors going on. And so what are you doing to kind of help the underdog?
Well, we've set up an office in Jaffna.
Okay.
And we've set up an office in Kilinochchi.
Okay.
And we are working with people who stayed there during the war.
Okay.
And trying to create jobs for them because the unemployment rates are very high. And also existing companies in agriculture,
Okay.
fisheries, IT, and education. We provide grants and supervision.
Okay. Well, that's why we at Tamil Culture wanted to talk to you. We want to know what you were doing. And definitely an honorable undertaking. I'm going to step back a little and maybe come back to your early life. You left from Sri Lanka, you went to India boarding school, then you ended up in the UK. And as your kind of path of kind of next progress, you decided to come to the States. You went to Wharton, you did an MBA. You could have done anything. And you started off as an engineering student who came to Wharton to do an MBA. You could have done anything, and Silicon Valley was kind of picking up and taking off at that time, and yet you chose not to go there. You chose to go the route of finance originally, and then you moved into investing. And I sense that your competitive side probably prompted you in that direction, but tell me a little bit about it. And also, you were one of the first people to start a hedge fund. So what brought you down that path?
Well, what I liked about the hedge fund is every day you get a report card. And at the end of the year, you know how you performed relative to your competitors.
Right.
So there's no bullshit. As they say in Wall Street those days, numbers don't lie, people do. So if you walk around saying you're a great hedge fund manager, say, show me your results. So I like the competitiveness of, it's like playing one day cricket. At the end of the day, you know whether you won or lost or whether you made money or not. And I like the dynamic nature of the business. Like this morning, I got up, as I turned on the TV, I saw that Israel had bombed Iran.
Correct.
Now, immediately I had to go into thinking and seeing how I can change my portfolio and how I can, what trades I need to make. And I like that dynamic nature. I don't think it could ever be like a business analyst at Exxon looking at oil prices all day long. That would not be fun.
Okay. So your mind is not trained to rest. I mean, aside from Sunday mornings, but.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, listen, you were 34 years old. You were at Needham, which is a small boutique investment firm at the time, and you were doing well. You'd risen the ranks pretty quickly. You'd become president. You were responsible for operations as well. You'd started your own hedge fund because that had been your interest. And yet, having all of that comfort, and again, this is a trend with you, you're comfortable, but then you want to kind of step out and try something new. You decided to go and start your own investment firm called Galleon. And why? Like, what was that need to do it further? Because you could have been at Needham and grown their hedge fund.
Yeah. I am a good number 500 employee, but I'm not a good number 2.
Okay.
Right? And so I felt frustrated that you had the responsibility, but not the authority because there was somebody above you.
Right.
Right. So I was thinking about leaving and starting my own firm.
Right.
Also, as you may know, strange things happen to men when they get close to 40. You either go buy a fancy sports car, you leave your wife,
Okay.
or you
Start a business.
start a business.
Okay.
And of the 3, the most easiest path, least destructive, was to start your own business. I love my wife too much,
I'm so glad you said that.
and cars don't interest me.
Okay.
I don't subscribe to the theory that the one with the biggest toys win.
Okay.
What I do subscribe to is experience life and travel and meet friends and do things that make you happy.
Okay. Well, speaking of experiences, you were running a $7 billion hedge fund at the height of everything. In 2008, you were listed as under the Forbes 400 richest people. You were number 262. So clearly lots of wealth to go there. So can I ask, how good were the parties? What were you doing to have fun?
Oh, you're tying my performance to the parties in New York City? Is that what you're trying to do?
I just want to know how extravagant it was. Who was there?
If I didn't have grown children, I will tell you, but with 3 grown children, I did almost everything that you can imagine.
Okay. Any big celebrities that you're like, hey, they were one of my besties?
No, I didn't follow the PDD model,
Oh, okay.
but I'm sure he had more fun than.
I appreciate your sense of humor and openness. So all good. Success was a good thing. You met a lot of interesting people.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you've had some challenges along the way, and we'll talk about that. But you've generally remained humble. And I guess just a question: to achieve this level of success, to do all the things that you do, and to keep your mind constantly going, you probably had to give up a couple of things along the way, right? What did you have to give up, do you think?
First I worked damn hard.
Yeah.
I worked from 6 in the morning till I came home at 6 in the evening. But when I say work, it was 100% immersed in the market and
Right.
trying to. So you gave up that side. But I also took a lot of vacations to recuperate. And when it's your passion, you don't feel like you gave up anything.
Okay. Well, you were taking vacations. You were running a $7 billion hedge fund, and it was probably one of the top hedge funds at the time, investing in tech. Everything was going great. And then the 2008 credit crisis hit. So already the markets, everything was in crisis. And then all of a sudden you got hit with a insider trading scandal. And before we go ahead, and I'm sure you've talked this to death, but just for the benefit of our audience, what does insider trading mean?
Okay. Insider trading means it started with companies, corporate insiders like the CFO, CEO. They were prevented from trading in their stock because they had knowledge of the finances and likely knowing how the stock would react when they released it. It then spread to Wall Street
Okay.
and said, investors like me, if you had access to information that was privileged, like revenues or earnings per share,
Yep.
or information about a company that was going to acquire a company, you could not buy that stock. You had to put it on a restricted list of stocks that anybody in the firm couldn't buy.
Right.
But they kept it purposely vague. They said the words were, you cannot trade on material non-public information, but they didn't define what material non-public information was. Right? So those of us in the industry who practiced for several years said that if you have information on mergers and acquisition or numbers, revenues and earnings per share of a company, you can't trade it. Now, we as Galleon had a restricted list because you come across information, and if it's even in the gray area, we used to put it on that list. So nobody in the firm could trade it.
Okay.
Right? Now, what they did was they wiretapped my cell phone.
Okay.
And any conversation of stocks, even if it was nothing to do with finances or thing, they try to say it's insider information.
Okay.
And during my trial, the chairman of the SEC said the beauty of insider trading is it's difficult to define it. So they could use that nebulous law to charge anybody that they wanted to. And after the financial crisis of 2008, they were looking for scapegoats.
Okay.
And so unfortunately, my number came up.
Do you think there's any specific reason why you, and just to give some context, there were a number of firms after your case that also were held accountable and for insider trading. But do you know why you, at the time, because you were one of the first and made a big splash for obvious reasons in that they were trying to hold somebody accountable in the aftermath of the 2008 bloodbath, but just any particular reasons? And do you think racism had anything to do with it?
No, I don't think racism had to do it.
Okay.
But the case started with an anonymous letter by somebody
Okay.
whose first language was not English. The anonymous letter I got a chance to read it.
Oh, okay.
And, the guy was a coward because he didn't sign the letter.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a little bit like something out of a movie. Maybe one day this will turn into a movie. There's already a book behind it, so. But talking about racism, so you don't think racism played a role today. As you tried to rise within Wall Street, did you, because you were one of the first, did you experience any losses, any rejection that you thought came from as a result of racism? Was it a harder climb for you, do you think, than anybody else?
I didn't think then, and I
Okay.
don't think now.
Okay.
I think a lot of people hide behind this racism word because their performance may not be as what they want, or they were not as successful.
Okay.
If you look for racism, you can find it everywhere, right? But I think that's a defeatist attitude. You chose to be in this business. It's result oriented. You see results, as I said, every evening. And, the only way racism could be used is on the investor side. that they don't invest with me because of my race or my color,
Right.
but they invest with somebody with a lower track record. I didn't experience that because my numbers were good, the money came.
Numbers are great, and there's a lot of people who have excellent work, but they still fall under the radar. They don't get recognized. Is there anything that you did that was spectacular, just in terms of getting out there, talking to people, building relationships, that helped you get noticed? Because you told me earlier, just before we started, that one of your first investors was George Soros, and he didn't give you a small check, he gave you a pretty big check. There has to be something that you've done to earn somebody's trust and to be likable. Is there anything that you did
Yeah, I
specifically
think,
on that front?
so investors came and met with us all the time.
Okay.
And they were evaluating me and asking me questions like, what do you do in your free time? And, how long have you been married?
And you didn't give them all the truth, right?
I told them, and if they didn't like it,
Okay.
the exit sign was there. But I didn't play golf
Okay.
during the week, right? Because too much time. I wanted to be in the market. Number two, they knew, I think, over a period of time that I was fearless. I didn't suffer from anxiety, and if I had a setback, I was willing to fight and come back. Plus, they knew I was honest. I hadn't taken anybody's money and run, and so I had a track record.
Right.
And so, yeah.
And so I know, you've maintained through the entire book that you've always played, well, I don't know about the words played by the rules, but you've always stuck to your word, and honesty was a big part of it. It's what your parents taught you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you say, what, no matter hell or high water, you stand by this? And you told me, and there's a book in this, there's a story in your book that says your mother would read to you every night, and she'd read to you about Tamil legends and myths, and the values that she imparted to you were about courage, bravery, and standing up for the right things. And so is that something you feel like you carry, and is that what you think has made you successful in so many ways?
Yeah, there are core values that my mother gave me.
Right.
And my father gave me other values. He didn't necessarily sit and read to me, but he used to say, don't throw the first punch, but make sure you throw the last punch.
Okay.
Which is don't run, stand your ground and fight.
That's a great segue, because when the insider trading scandal came through, multiple people, I think about at least 26 people, were held accountable and arrested and under investigation, and almost all of them pled guilty. So they took a lower sentence. They pled guilty in order to get a low sentence, and you were the only one who didn't. You held your ground. And I understand that part of it would be your upbringing and your desire to ensure the right thing. But what else drove you to say, this is a pretty significant moment? You're going to end up in prison. You're going to give up your time, your free time, your time with your family, everything you've built, to go to prison to stand your ground. Why did you do that? And was there ever a moment you said, you know what, maybe today I'm going to be weak. Today I'm going to give this in because it'll make life easier?
No, because I firmly believe I didn't do anything wrong.
Okay.
And if I go and plead guilty, what type of human being am I to something I didn't do wrong? Now, I was fighting the biggest justice department in the world, the US government. They have infinitely more resources. When they charge somebody, the conviction rate is over 95%. Right? But there's nothing in that. There's not an ounce of DNA in my body that ever thought of pleading guilty. You have three options when they charge you. One is plead guilty, you cut a sweet deal, and I was offered that. The second is you point somebody else out, right? And so you get a smaller deal. And the third is you fight. And for me, the most comfortable thing at that time to do, and even today I don't regret it, was to fight. Now, my daughter is a lawyer, and she followed the case very closely. And she came and told me, Dad, I'm glad you fought. right? And that made it all worthwhile.
Must have brought tears to your eyes, just knowing that your kids thought, because they gave up a lot. And you say that in the book. Your wife and your family, they probably gave up more than even you, or that's how you felt. So I assume that was a very emotional moment.
When my daughter said that,
Yeah.
yep.
Have you ever cried since?
I'm not a crybaby, but I do cry occasionally. I think there are only 4 people that can make me cry:
Oh, who are they?
my 3 children and my wife.
Okay. I do have another question. You ended up spending 7.5 years in prison altogether, and you've clearly indicated you love family. You've done everything right by the book, and that you've always made sure that your relationships with people are trustworthy, that you come in your best form, and yet people you trusted let you down. They turned on you for their own good. And so the question I have is, yes, you have your family who you love, but how has that experience changed how you interact with people now, and how you build relationships, and the level of trust you give to people?
So, there's only 3 people who testified against me, each of whom were charged with crimes, mostly tax evasion. I think when they testified and lied, I believe in karma, right? They put a curse on their family without knowing it.
Okay.
I'll tell you a little bit of a story about my dad, because that'll, help you understand. My father was not a rich man. He was born in a village in the north of Sri Lanka. He went to university and then went to London on a government scholarship to study chartered accountancy.
Okay.
He couldn't afford to go on his own. On the contract, it said when you come back, you'll work for the government for 5 years.
Okay.
So that was a quid pro quo. He went back, he came back in 1956, and the then government of Bandaranaike, Chandrika's father, passed a singular only policy,
Okay.
which means that if you had to work for the government, you had to study singular to O levels or something like that. That was not on the contract when he signed it. He refused. He said that was not in the contract. I'm not going to work under these conditions.
Okay.
So they fired him. Right? Okay, just come back from England. He was a student there. And they fired him, but not only did they fire him, they said you have to pay back 5 years of expenses in England as a student, including rent, food that the government had paid. And he refused to renege, and he got fired.
Right.
When as a little boy I heard him say that, I was so proud, right? Now, so here was my father, no job, no money in the bank, had to pay 5 years of expenses. And, in my opinion, he did the right thing, right? And then he ended up in his business career, doing extremely well. So there are times when, you have to make decisions, and you make a decision, at least I didn't make a decision out of fear for myself, for my family. I made a decision of what felt right to me. And even today, I don't regret making the decision. But if I didn't go to prison, you wouldn't be interviewing me here.
That is true.
There are some benefits
for both of us. Okay, they say in life that everything happens for a reason. At least I believe in that. What do you think the purpose of you going to prison ultimately was for you?
Well, it gave me space and time to think about what I want to do when I come out.
Okay.
And every single time I sat and thought about it, it was to help other people, especially the underprivileged, and give them a chance in life.
Okay.
So I kept thinking about how to do it, right? Now, my thoughts always went towards the north, because they were bombed by the then governments for fighting for their rights. And so when I came out, I said, this is something I want to do. And I may have written it in a book or said it somewhere. My father said, spend the first third of your life learning, the second third of your life earning, and the last third of your life giving. Fortunately, I was the executor of my father's will.
Okay.
And I know 100% of his savings he gave to charity.
Okay.
And so I really wanted to follow in his footsteps. So we've set up offices in the north. We've granted capital, growth capital to different industries, agriculture, IT, education, aquaculture. And I really enjoy going there. I'm tired of the scene of going to Colombo and going to a club and dancing and all that nonsense doesn't interest me so much. I'll tell you, last time I went to Colombo, the day after it, I took a plane and went to Jaffna.
Okay.
Yeah, because Colombo becomes a party city, and if that's,
It's
I'm not,
fast paced, fast
well,
moving,
yeah,
and
and but I go to Jaffna. We built a house near Nallur Temple,
okay.
and it's peaceful, and you meet real people, and it just gives you satisfaction.
Okay.
And you know what? My wife, who's Punjabi,
Yes.
loves Jaffna, so that makes it,
And your kids too.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we move on from that phase of your life now, and I want to talk to you about current day, the world that we live in, America. You came to America. You decided to make this your home. You've talked about how much you appreciated the values that this country has, the rule of law, and you accepted the verdict of the jury, even though you didn't agree with it, because that was due process was done. And I guess the question I have for you today is: today America is suffering on the world stage. The reputation of the country doesn't seem like it's a collaborative, fair state. And so I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on where you thought America was going, because if nothing else, everybody's looking at America, right? Everybody has something to say about America. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the country has been polarizing itself. There may be many people, many reasons for it. But if you go back 30, 40, 50 years ago,
Yeah.
the women started entering the workforce, around World War II.
Yeah.
Prior to that, men went to work, women stayed at home. But when the war started, women started going to work. They were stitching uniforms, they were answering telephones. And so the relative power structure between the men and the women started narrowing. Before, if you were a woman in America, you sat, I know you're a great baker, bake cookies,
Thank you. Thank you for calling that out.
and taking your kids to church, right?
Right.
So when the war ended, the relative differences changed. Then, over a period of time, the white male in America, his power was eroding. And then you saw the election of Obama, a black man, to the presidency.
Right.
So the core racist conservative whites were angry.
Right.
And so Trump was clever enough to tap into that anger, right?
Yeah.
And, like sheep, we followed him and elected him, despite knowing what he was in his first term. So I think the core of America, was eroding.
Okay.
And I tell you a statistic. If you look at the young men between the ages of 19 and 30, Trump won that age group, young men,
Yep.
by 30%. If you look at the similar group among women, Kamala Harris won by 10%. So what does that tell you? The young white males were disproportionately MAGA supporters,
Yep.
right? Now, I think the turning point was when Trump got shot in the ear, right? And he came out saying this.
Yep.
Now, we have a few young white men in my office, and they all celebrated and said, he's a gangster, you know, and, they felt macho. So that, I think, was the turning point. And if somebody had said among the young people, Trump won by 30%, I would have not believed it. But these are numbers, so
Do you have any advice for young men?
young men.
Yeah, based on your comment here. Because clearly they feel disenfranchised. So curious if you had any advice.
I just say work hard. The harder I work, the luckier I get, I feel. Work hard. Don't believe in the dream of America, which was all inclusive.
Okay.
And people like Trump will come and go. But we have a right to vote every 2 years in the midterm election and participate. For me, at least for me, this is the best country in the world to live in, Trump or no Trump.
Okay. And so you believe that if you had to give a message, I guess, out to people who are questioning the potential of America, what would you say? Do you think America will be able to restore its leadership position? What do you see the future as?
I think yes. I think we'll go through ups and downs.
Okay.
There's a statistic. America spends more on defense
Yeah.
than the next 10 countries combined. Our military capabilities are way better than others. The only problem is American public don't want their children to die, whereas in Russia or maybe China, that's not the case. People will fight till the end.
Yes.
Here, if 2 Americans die in Gaza, the TV is, it's all over the TV. People are protesting and stuff like that. And that's why I think Trump wants to be more like Putin and President Xi than the head of a democracy. But we can still talk here better than in Russia or in China. I mean, relatively.
Right.
I think the opportunities are great. There are a lot of enterprising, energetic people here. And in the long run, I myself, I love living here, despite all the shit that's happened to me.
Okay.
Right?
So, you are lucky enough to be in America, where there's always a chance to reinvent yourself, to find your way forward. And you ended up in prison, and you were fortunate enough that you had a fallback. You'd had all this wealth that you'd built over time. So for you, there was a path forward coming out. I guess not everybody has that opportunity, right? When they run into setbacks. So the question I have for you is, what have you learned about setbacks, and how do you, for anyone who's trying to kind of reinvent themselves to grow from a setback, what advice do you have?
So I think you'll learn more from your failures than your success, right? There's still a lot of opportunities, whether you're really young or middle-aged in this country. You just have to work hard. The work ethic has to be strong.
Right.
And if you're going to start a business, I would advise that you take a pen and paper, I write down what are your advantages, what do you bring to the table, right? And you have to understand your competitive advantages. And then you have to execute, really hard.
Now, do you think everybody has something that they bring to the table?
In different spheres.
Okay.
Right? I mean, you could easily start a baking shop, right?
Maybe we'll have a conversation about this after. Just kidding. But okay. So I want to actually just talk a little bit about the Tamil community quickly, because you obviously came out of prison, and there is obviously a stigma associated with going to prison and then coming out, what white collar or crime or otherwise. And so I wanted to ask how the reception has been from the Tamil community. Have you had any has anybody turned you down? Have there been unfortunate exchanges? Just in absence of a reception at all?
See, the first question you should ask is, do I give a shit? Right?
I'm going to assume the answer is no, but please do elaborate.
I know I walked with dignity right throughout the journey.
Okay.
I am not blaming anybody, right? On the contrary, right? I think people look up to me because I was not a rat. I didn't sneak on other people.
Right.
Even when I went to prison, people looked up to me because the rats were ones that snitched on their friends. So I think, my friends know they can depend on me. I will be there for you. If you need a foxhole and the bullets are flying,
Yeah.
I'm not going to run.
Okay.
Okay, so I think, I had 100 and some odd people come and visit me in prison on the logbook.
Okay.
That was a record in the Bureau of Prisons. Right? I didn't ask anybody to come. They came on their own. We had a good time and talking. You're only bothered by your stigma or perceived stigma if you let it, if you let it sit rent free in your brain.
Right.
I didn't worry about it.
Okay. Well, I guess people go through things like this and they could very well be the last man standing, but you're telling me that all these people still stood by you. You were never lonely. So you've
No,
had
no,
a
no,
good
no, no,
path.
no. You are lonely in prison. I'm not
Yeah,
saying that.
yeah.
What I'm saying
But you
is
felt supported.
I felt supported.
Okay.
And many of my friends came multiple times. I mean, I'm not saying prison is a bed of roses. It's a tough place.
So your definition of success. What was your definition of success at 40? What is your definition of success now?
Yeah, at 40, I wanted to build the top hedge fund in the world.
Okay.
And I worked hard and I built a team and I traveled and all that.
Okay.
Definition of success right now is to live to be 90.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe 100 is better.
Are you working out a lot?
I hurt my leg when I was in Jaffna, and
Okay.
so I'm curtailed.
Okay.
But once I can start working out. I do work out with a trainer 3 times a week.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's talk about investments because we can't have this conversation without investments. So what are your thoughts on crypto? And I guess how has it impacted the relevance of Wall Street?
So crypto, like crypto token like a Bitcoin
Yeah.
or others are storers of value. I think it has a place in your portfolio
Okay.
because you're not supervised or over-regulated by the Fed or the SEC. It's still evolving. I have about 10% of my portfolio in crypto.
Okay.
And I put it away. It's like gold. You put it away and you watch it. And so far it's grown, it's now 108 to 110,000.
Okay.
And I don't worry about, it moving up and down.
Okay. And so you do anticipate that your position in that will grow over time?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. And, I talked about a little bit about crypto and it's clearly impacted, or at least I think there have now been other parts of the world that have grown in terms of having relevance from a financial center perspective. Do you think Wall Street has, as a result, lost its relevance?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
We are the deepest and biggest market in the world. The liquidity here is amazing. I can pick up the phone and sell 100,000 shares of Bitcoin in 10 seconds. In different countries, it'll take days to sell that amount.
Okay. All right. So I know you have an interest and a like and a thumbs up for NVIDIA. Is there anywhere else that you would recommend we deploy our capital? And also maybe a different question is, or an add-on to that is, do you have a different strategy for young people versus for old people, for like a more mature, older group?
No. I think what all investors should do is figure out what are the major trends in the world and figure out how to benefit from it.
Okay.
One of the major trends is crypto.
Yeah.
NVIDIA is benefiting from artificial intelligence, and they have a lead that so far is commanding.
Okay.
When artificial intelligence is pervasive, the productivity of America and China will increase meaningfully. So that's why I like NVIDIA. I like crypto. I like some cloud software companies. I like the security sector
Okay.
because the bad guys are always trying to, penetrate companies for ransom, and so that's a secular growth sector.
Okay. Anything about healthcare?
Yeah, there's a lot of technology being introduced into healthcare. We have a nut job that is the healthcare secretary, RFK, who doesn't believe in vaccines.
Right.
But he's going to be a short-term player. But using artificial intelligence in healthcare, you're going to be able to develop drugs very quickly.
Okay. I want to quickly hit on something you told me earlier, which was, some of your, I guess, your personal projects and investments are around the agricultural sector and fisheries sector. Now, that's not necessarily a commonplace investment strategy here. People aren't thinking about that because they're always thinking about tech. Is there anything you want to highlight about those sectors? Why people should look at it? Why people should invest there?
In Sri Lanka?
In Sri Lanka and in general.
Yeah, I mean, in Sri Lanka or in the US, they employ a lot of people, relative to the country.
Right.
A lot of people live off fisheries and rice and commodities in Sri Lanka. At one time, we were able to, we used to have enough produce to export to other countries.
Right.
Now we are importing all that stuff. In the US, around Second World War, we had 47% of the people work in agriculture.
Right.
Today, it's about 7%. So there's been a lot of technology being introduced, and the productivity has gone up.
Right.
In Sri Lanka, there's an opportunity to introduce modern technology into the farming area. For example, an average coconut in Sri Lanka yields about 60 coconuts a year. In India, it's 160. So there are low-hanging fruits that we can, install. And so one of the things we're thinking about is to set up an agricultural center.
Okay.
That will help the farmers in the north and the south increase their productivity and increase their income.
Okay, so it's a good place to look. There's just a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, but it's not, I don't want to use the word sexy, but it's not exciting like AI and.
But we all got to eat, right? So.
Yep.
All right. Okay. I want to kind of end off on discussing family a little bit. Your ordeal could break most people. It could make people resentful. It could, families have broken up for way less. But yours stayed together, and you have talked about how much you love your family, how much you value the sacrifices they made, and you recognize that they went through a hard time. But how have you managed to build such a close family unit, especially because your job was very demanding? You didn't always get to be at home, and yet you've built this really close-knit community, close-knit family, and children who respect you. What actions do you attribute to that?
I think first is parental guidance. For the last 15 or 18 years of his life, my father and mother came and stayed with us in New York City.
Okay.
I think that's a powerful thing for the children, that their grandfather and grandmother are there. And, my father and mother used to talk about Sri Lanka in the good old days. And they were there during the golden years of Sri Lanka, till early 70s. And I think that kept the family close. Now, when a parent goes through adversity, I think the families come together rather than break apart.
Right.
If they believe that you didn't do anything, that was wrong.
Right.
I think having a daughter who was a lawyer helped as well, because she could see the uneven justice that I experienced.
Right.
Finally, I don't think, and you can ask people who know me, I'm not bitter about it, bitter about the experience. And thankfully, in my life, I've seen the highs and the lows. At the highs, I had my own plane, right? I used to fly around to the Caribbean with the family, go to sporting events and all that. In the lows, I was in a room that was probably 5 feet by 12 feet, right, with 3 outfits, and it didn't bother me, you know. And it really didn't bother me. I'm not just saying it for the sake of saying it. I said, okay, this is when you deal with adversity, you have to, I mean, at least me, you sit and say, what can I change about it and what I can't change.
Right.
And then I worry about the things that I can change, and focus my efforts there.
Well, congratulations, obviously, on your family. And I guess when you were in prison, you were productive with your time because Uneven Justice, the book, was written there, is my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I did it for, I wrote about an hour a day and it was therapeutic for me. And you must remember at prison, we didn't have access to internet, had access to computers, so you had to sort of write by hand.
And did you intend to publish the book always, or was it written as to pass your time and potentially for you, and then you decided you really wanted to get your story out there?
No, when I started, I didn't intend to publish it, but
Okay.
it was therapeutic for me.
Okay.
And then as the days went on, it was enjoyable, and then a few people said, "Why don't you publish it?" And I said, "Okay." So we published it here.
Yeah.
And then when I went to Jaffna, somebody suggested you should translate it into Tamil and publish it. So we did okay there. But we didn't sell the book. We gave it free
Okay.
to the students in Jaffna. And here we published the book, but in New York, but we gave all the proceeds to charity.
Okay.
I didn't tell you my other mantra, which is those who die rich are big fucking idiots. You should give your wealth to help other people, is what I think, And some of the most miserable guys are the guys who are rich, because they're worried they might lose it.
Well, your dad did good. You are following the third part of his advice. You've talked about your wife, staying on family. You've talked about your wife. You love her. And you guys, how old were you when you got married? Are you willing to share that?
31.
31, okay. So you got married relatively young.
31 is young. Are you married?
Well, I think, well, it depends. There was a time when 31 seemed old, but then it was young. Because now people are getting married a lot later in life because they're prioritizing their professional ambitions over family. And so I kind of wanted to know what your advice would be to people who are saying, you know what, I'm going to put family, there's time for family. There's time to get married. I'm going to focus on and building my career. Any advice there? Any thoughts?
I don't think you can plan these things. When you meet the person, you'll know. And, I met my wife at the right time for me, which was I was graduating from business school and I was moving to New York. And it seemed we got along. And then, 3 or 4 years later, it seemed the right time to marry each other. But by then, my wife was 28 or 29. It was considered relatively older for women to get married, But I don't know. I don't know whether it's a magic time.
Okay. All right. Okay. What do you so on this question, and yes, it's always a question, what is the right time to do things? Separately, and I think that probably prevails in most people's heads, career and family are probably big questions. But what's one other question you think young people should be asking themselves that they don't spend enough time on?
I think building relationships, family and friends.
Okay.
Not spending too much time behind a computer trying to program or, watch these silly sci-fi movies and all that. Just form relationships, be form a group of guys you can trust. Because going out there, there's a war going on at several levels, and you want in your um, box or in your what do you call it, foxhole, people who you can trust, and you don't need people who run away from you at the first sign of trouble.
Right. And I guess that really did help you through your own journey. So advice to live by. I guess this has been a really great conversation, but the last question that I have to ask you is, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want Raj Rajaratnam to be remembered for?
Okay, I am not a big legacy guy.
Okay.
I don't want my name on any building or, I just think I would like to be remembered as a guy who lived his life along his beliefs. You can argue whether my beliefs are good or bad, but I did not take a step back. Right? I didn't run, I didn't hide. I walked a straight journey like a man, and if I got punched, I got up and, I didn't sort of lay down and roll over. That's not a legacy, but that's who I think I am. And I am the son of my father.